Hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday and welcome back to the stream. I don't know why. Maybe it's just still that I have never quite gotten used to air conditioning, but I live in Florida now. I lived in Arizona the last few years, so one would think I'm somewhat used to AC. I'm not. I'm freezing. Maybe it's because I didn't grow up with it. I don't know. I am so cold. I have a sweater. I've got my blanket. I turned the AC off. We're burning a candle in here. I'm just needing some cozy vibes. I don't know about you guys. Maybe it's because of the surreal discussion we're having. I don't know. But I'm psyched for the stream today. Somebody requested that we make this the topic to talk about today in our comment section on one of my Instagram posts yesterday, and boy, is it a doozy. There is a new question on TikTok thanks to one super viral video that has now gained almost 20 million views in the last 3 weeks. Would you, as a woman, rather be trapped in the woods with a man or a bear? The responses might honestly shock you, and the responses themselves have wildly divided the internet. I am expecting every single one of you weigh in our live chat today throughout the stream, because I'm dying to know your perspective on this. I will weigh in as well on the other end of things, but I'm stoked to unpack all of it. As we're getting started, do me a huge favor and let me know who you are and where you're watching from in our live chat today. I also want to give a huge thank you and shout out to our amazing friends over at Public Square, our headline sponsor of the stream, who helps to make everything that we do possible. As I told you guys yesterday, Public Square, as the nation's largest and fastest growing marketplace of pro-family, pro-freedom, as I'm hitting my mic, and pro-faith values, is doing a new campaign for the month of May. Isabel needs more coffee. Called Swap 30, where they are recommending 30 different switches you can make for products in your home for better, non-toxic alternatives, all from companies that you know share your values. Everything from fishing gear to coffee to switch to, and anything else you can possibly imagine. You can check it all out on publicsquare.com. All one word, Public Square. And thank you so much, team, for helping to make everything we do possible. Let's say hi to some people. Starting over on Instagram, we've got Irie watching in Auckland, New Zealand. You know, the crazier everything gets here in the United States, if I ever were to move to another country, it probably would be joining you guys, the Kiwis down in New Zealand. I freaking love all of you. We've got Tanner watching in Oklahoma. Neely is watching in Iowa. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, the ginger Catholic. I grew up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho for several years. We've got Romania, Florida, Virginia, Greeley, Colorado, Montana, Texas, Ohio, Portugal. We've got Canada, Birmingham, England. A bunch of people from England today. That's awesome. Hello to our friends from across the pond. Oxford, the UK, Nairobi, Kenya. So very cool. India and more. Over on Rumble, we've got Jim and Chizzy checking things out for us right away in our live chat on YouTube. Jill, Thomas, G-Fact, Woo, and Delane Thomas are first up in our chat. And we've got M-Rock and Nitty Witty kicking things off for us over on Getter. Okay, so I am a bit stumped by this question. I'm just going to be honest with everybody up front. If I was approached by a man on the street for a man on the street interview, and if I was asked with no other context, would you rather be trapped in the woods with a bear or with a man, I honestly have no idea how I would respond. But how this all got started, as I mentioned, is one now super viral video. It's approaching 20 million views in the last 3 weeks on TikTok that has inspired many, many other videos secondarily. And watch what most women immediately, zero hesitation, had to say. Oh, preview to the end there. Why is this being silly? Here we go.
Would you rather be stuck in a forest with a man or a bear?
Bear. Man is scary. With a bear.
What I've heard about bears, they don't always attack you, right? Unless you like fuck with them. So maybe a bear.
Depends what man, but probably a bear.
Oh, 100% a bear, which is like terrifying to say, but
Definitely a bear. Some men are very scary out there.
A bear.
I would say a man.
Well, I know we've
So let's start that over one more time, and we'll just count together. But as you probably saw, only one girl said man.
Would you rather be stuck in a forest with a man or a bear?
Bear.
One.
Man is scary.
One for bear.
With a bear.
Two for bear.
What I've heard about bears, they don't always attack you, right? Unless you like fuck with them. So maybe a bear.
Three bears.
Depends what man, but probably a bear.
oh, 100%
Four
a bear,
bears.
which is like
Five
terrifying
bears.
to say, but
Definitely a bear.
Six
Some men are
bears.
very scary out there.
A bear. Seven bears.
I would say a man.
And one person who said man. So this is just a random assortment of 7 women that this guy went up to on the street asking, would you rather be stuck in the woods with a man or with a bear? Only one person, only one of these women said that they would rather be stuck in the woods with a man versus a bear. And I saw this video and immediately it got my granola brain gears turning. Okay, you guys know I grew up in the mountains of Colorado and spent a few years growing up in North Idaho, so bears were regularly a part of my backyard experience. In fact, my mom just texted me a picture the other day of a bear in our backyard. I saw my first winter bear this last year when I was home for Christmas on Christmas Day, which was super cool. I had never seen a bear in the wild on Christmas, but I have seen a ridiculous amount of bears in my day, okay? Generally speaking, a lot of my experience in explaining what it's like to grow up in Colorado and in Idaho to people who are largely on the East Coast about what life is like there is that bears really aren't as dangerous as people think they are. Generally speaking, they're a whole lot more afraid of you than you are afraid of them. And so I could understand immediately why a lot of these girls instinctually said bear, just based on my experience running into bears in my neighborhood while I'm camping in the woods, etc. But it seems a lot of people on the internet were wildly offended and or angry that these women instinctually said bear instead of man. And I can honestly see where they're coming from in their immediate defensiveness of this, but I understand what these women are trying to say as well. As I mentioned, this clip has completely divided the internet and created a whole new realm of content on TikTok specifically centered around this question, but some people are not responding to it very well.
Well, I know we've all seen the video. There's a guy walking around asking women, would you rather be stuck in the woods with a man or a bear? Most of the women said a bear. I just want y'all, just hear me out. I just want y'all to slow it down and realize that social media isn't real life. You pull up all these fucking stats. 1 in 6 women will be attacked by a man in her lifetime. Only 1 in 1 million people have a chance to be attacked by a bear. Let's think about this. You live with and walk past in your life probably hundreds of thousands of men. You will probably never fucking just walk past a bear, all right? So no shit, okay? I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. The chance that I'm gonna walk up on a Kodiak bear? What the fuck?
Although apparently there are bears who live in Florida. Did not know this until I moved here, and apparently it's a much more common thing than you think.
None ever in life, never. I don't even go to the zoo. Fuck is you talking about? That's one. That's proximity. The way y'all be bringing this shit up is ridiculous. The way that question should have been asked, would you rather be lost in the woods with a bear that wants to kill you or a man that wants to kill you? With a bear that wants to harm you or a man that wants to harm you? So that you could get the real fucking answers. I ain't never hit a woman violently. I ain't never put a violent hand on a woman. I ain't never sexually assaulted a woman. No, none of that. Ever. Nah, I ain't never even called a woman out of her fucking name. Not to her face. I think all that is terrible and wrong. But y'all acting like men are scarier than bears? You ain't watched enough nature documentaries, baby. Go watch the one where they trying to get the pictures of that big ass bear and the light from the flash scares him. And
This tells me this man has probably never seen a bear in the wild. Just as an aside, like if your only experience with bears is watching documentaries about bear attacks, naturally that's going to be your experience with them.
And a startled bear. I swear to fucking God, the earth moved when he got startled. Just go watch a few fucking videos. The way y'all, boy, you dumb as hell.
I'm a sexual assault survivor.
Interesting. So that first guy ends up getting wildly canceled on the internet. He had to issue a formal apology video. He's made several responses since then because people were so angry with him that women felt like he wasn't hearing what they were trying to say. I do think there's some validity to his point that maybe we're asking the wrong question here. In asking women, would you rather be trapped in the woods with a bear or with a man? That's so vague. Maybe you should have been asking a woman, would you rather be trapped in the woods with a man who wants to harm you or a bear who wants to harm you, which might be a more fair and non-biased question. But he got raked over the coals on TikTok over this, and other men are interestingly responding in much different ways. Check this out.
A 55-year-old woman assaulted me and 3 of my friends at a party where she served a bunch of 15-year-olds alcohol. Way to go, Granny. And I don't hate women. I've stepped in to defend women against attacks from men in city streets or bars. I can't say if they're all sexually related or sexually motivated. They probably were. But when we get to the question of this, I mean, like, I do empathize for victims. I get that. But the question isn't real. And we all know the question isn't real. It's hypothetical. I was just at a store. There are hundreds or thousands of people at this Walmart, men and women walking around, doing their thing, minding their own business. Not a single woman in there was shifty-eyed, dysphoric, or afraid of any of the men in that store. I was just at a restaurant. I was at a bank. I was at a coffee shop. I was walking through a park. No one was afraid of men. Replace any of those men with one bear and see what happens. So because we know it's hypothetical, let's have an adult conversation. Ready? The existence of the question at all creates bias against men.
Interesting. I promise we are going to come back to this premise. But we got to get through all the videos first.
I can trick you just the same way. I'd say, what do you think Islamic men use more to murder their wives with? Guns or knives or rope? The fact that I asked the question, you'd go, well, why is he asking that question? Do they murder their wives a lot? The question is safety, bear, man, alone, right? Those are the 4 real words in that question. It is embedding a bias against men. Every woman that has answered that question, bear, has stepped out in public since, has interacted with hundreds of men.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong on this front.
Average woman will interact with 300 men per day. Maybe they opt for the bear just because they want to mix it up. They're like, I'm getting so bored with the thousands of men that I see every week that maybe I just want to see a bear. I don't think you understand the gravity of this question. As a abuse survivor, I'm standing up against a false claim against the nature of men, where 1 in 1,000 men, or maybe just a hair over 1 in 1,000 men, will commit a crime of this nature. That's a very thin number of men. And as a man whose family was responsible for starting World War I, you know, the assassination by the Black Hand, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, my family paid for that assassination. We started World War I, which is why World War II happened. Because I'm so closely tied to that genocide, I've studied it. And Hitler and the Germans used the same type of questionings and comparative logic to wage war against Jews.
I told you this concept, this question was creating a much longer and more intense dialogue on the internet than just the simplicity of bear versus man. I told you it was going to get interesting.
I'm literally trying to stop thousands of women who don't know any better but then to participate in a trend from creating this wave of propaganda against men. Someone is trying to use this question against men, and women think it's a cool, dramatic way to say, I'm afraid of men. But they're really actually not afraid of men. Because they wouldn't go outside. They wouldn't go shopping. They wouldn't walk through the park. They wouldn't do anything. They'd be so actually mortified of men. The question appeals to a logical fallacy called the fallacy of relative privation. They're trying to say that because a single man could do more harm than a single bear, that all men are more dangerous than all bears on average.
Interesting. That's a fascinating thought.
Regardless of the context of the interaction. That strips away all sense of goodwill or truth to the fact that women interact with 300 men per day on average. That strips away the truth that a woman per male exposure, if you walk down the sidewalk and you see a guy, you have a 1 in 35 million chance of being forcibly raped in that walk by on a sidewalk. That fallacy of relative privation strips all logic to the fact that men are by and large safe. But yeah, 81% of women will report being sexually harassed or assaulted. 43% of men, just the same. The number of people who will experience unwanted sexual contact, men and women, are roughly the same. Men will underreport at 3 times the rate of women. Men are victimized just as much.
That is a fascinating statistic. Anybody in our chat want to try to fact check that for us? Men are 3 times less likely to report being sexually assaulted than women. We made a different video this morning on Instagram about a 5th grade boy who was a victim of grooming from his teacher, his 24-year-old teacher, who has been regularly making out with him, I guess, at school, despite being engaged to another man. Fascinating. That's a really interesting thought there. Men are victimized just as much, but they are 3 times less likely to report the crime.
But we're stigmatized against talking about it. Both sides are victims, but men are not doing this campaign to smear women to try to damage the entire, gender of women. Except for me now. I'm doing what's called logical parallels. My whole argument for the last 2 weeks has been such. Since women assault children, their biological kids, at 2.5x the rate that all men assault all women sexually, then women should lose custody of their kids until they stop it, because the phrase going around online right now is all men until no men. So until no women, all women, women do not deserve custody of their biological kids if any of them are capable of harming a child, because children are innocent. And honestly, all parallels aside, it's the abuse of children that is propagating people who are becoming monsters later on in life. So if anyone could make a decision right now to make the world a better place in the next 15 years, it's women not abusing their kids. It's already too late for us as adults. We're already screwed. We all have our trauma that we have to work through, and that's going to be a dogfight. But if we want to guarantee the world's going to be a better place, let's stop abusing kids. So the reason why women are choosing the bear is because it's not a real question, and they won't have consequences if they answer in a dramatic way for effect. Just like the 30-something% of boys that are like, well, dude, if there's no consequences, I totally take advantage of a chick. See, yeah, maybe people are bad people by nature, but people still obey the law. And that's why if 32% of college men would commit SA if there's no consequences, but then only 1 out of every 1,000 men will commit that crime, that shows how much people have discipline over their nature. And you cannot say the same thing about a bear.
TikTok. Interesting. So 2 different men's responses there. The first one trying to make the argument, this question is stupid because bears are actually a lot worse than you think they are, and you should really be asking the question, a bear who wants to harm you or a man who wants to harm you. The second man's response here is really interesting. He's asking, why is this question being asked? Because statistically, it's actually very, very unlikely that in all of the interactions you as a woman have with men, you are going to be victimized, particularly in a sexual assault manner, in some specific way. You, on average, as a woman, interact with about 300 men every single day. And what did he say? The chances of being violently, we will say, graped for the purpose of YouTube here, by passing a man on the street were 1 in 3.5 million or something. I mean, it's completely statistically impossible for something like that to happen. And so he's asking, why is the question even being asked in the first place? It's being asked to create and construct a false narrative against men, to say that a very small number of violent, evil, horrible men, which do exist and are out there, represent the attitudes, values, and behavior of all men everywhere. And if we really want to be quote unquote fair, then we should apply that same standard to women. Interesting. Women in particular are really upset that men are having a defensive response to the overwhelming preference of women choosing bear in the woods. Again, if you guys are just joining us, this all comes from an original TikTok video posted about 3 weeks ago that's approaching 20 million views, asking women in a man on the street interview, would you rather be trapped in the woods with a man or a bear? These two men represent a whole host of other videos of men saying, this is really stupid, you should pick a man and not bear. And women got really, really upset by that as well.
Right now, women are responding to the question, would you rather encounter a bear or a man while alone in the woods? And most women are saying that they would rather encounter a bear because they believe they are safer in the presence of a bear. The 750,000 black bears in North America unalive less than one person per year on average. Men aged 18 to 24 are 167 times more likely to unalive someone. And the big thing here is that it's not just unaliving someone. According to RAINN, 1 out of 6 American women has been the victim of attempted or completed assault in her lifetime. Over half of women have reported experiencing, and only about 6% of men who commit assault against a woman ever spend a day in jail.
That is a huge problem in and of itself, by the way. What's really odd to me is in our Me Too culture, Me Too era, where we're encouraging the reporting of this type of stuff, actual offenders of SA, actual child abuse offenders, particularly those who need to register later on as sex offenders, very few of them actually spend time in prison. Rarely at this point are they even prosecuted for their crimes. So it's interesting that we're trying to create a culture against that behavior, and yet we have zero punishment and zero retribution for what that behavior looks like when it's actually acted upon.
So yeah, women are much more likely to be attacked by a man than a bear. And the worst thing a bear can do is unalive you. We need to work harder as a society to make women feel safer by creating a culture of believing and supporting our survivors.
If I survive,
we need, in this woman's words, to create a culture that is more supportive of women by believing women and survivors. So she would pick the bear instead of the man in the woods. One girl put together a video reading some of the most controversial and viral comments on the original video, and this one was fascinating to watch.
the bear attack, I won't have to see the bear at family reunions. The worst thing the bear can do is kill me. The bear sees me as a human being. After what those men did to that monitor lizard, the bears are not safe with men either.
In case you don't know what that means, recently I guess there was some situation where a group of men gang graped a monitor lizard and then proceeded to kill it. Real story, not making that up.
The bear doesn't get enjoyment out of it. The bear didn't pretend to be my friend for months beforehand. No one will say that I liked the bear attack. No one will talk about the bear's bright future. If the bear and the man both want to hurt me and I scream loud enough, there's a better chance that the bear will actually run away. A bear wouldn't film it and send it to all his friends. The men getting angry at this don't realize that there are fates worse than death. Ask Junko Furuta, Sadie Robinson, Shanann Watts if they would choose the man or the bear.
Not really sure what.
Would you choose the man or the bear? I find this fascinating that for the most part, men are responding to this question saying, obviously you would choose men. And women are responding to this question saying, obviously you would choose the bear. And how dare men even remotely question why we would choose the bear? Every once in a while, I will see a few men go back and forth and try to flip-flop and say the opposite rather than following the general trend of men. This guy tried to pull out some receipts to prove it.
This is a debate, but here we are. And I've seen a whole lot of comments from people who don't understand women's stories or statistics. So to be clear, the answer is unequivocally a bear, and here are the 2 reasons why. First, the numbers. In the United States, there are 340,000 bears and about 57 million hikers, 26 million of which are female. Since 2020, there have been exactly 7 women killed by bears and 15 non-fatal attacks on women. In the US, there are also 165 million men and 168 million women. Since 2020, there have been 8,000 fatal attacks on women by men and 1.6 million non-fatal attacks. Yeah, but what about adjusting for population size? Okay, fine. But first, just so we're clear, this is an impossible hypothetical, because in the US, the Departments of Natural Resources in every state regulate the population of bears. They do not regulate the population of men. But sure, for the sake of this, let's do the impossible. In order to adjust for population, the number of bears in the United States would have to increase by a multiplier of 485 in order to equate to the same population of men. In other words, to get us to 165 million bears, which means you'd have to take that same 485 and make it a multiplier of the incidence. So in this hypothetical, 3,395 deaths and 7,275 non-fatal attacks, which means even in this impossible hypothetical of 165 million bears, you're still greater than 2 times more likely to be killed by a man than a bear.
I'll tell you what, I am not a math magician. Math was my worst subject growing up, so I'm glad someone takes the time to actually do proportional statistics here. But this is fascinating.
If you're a woman in the United States, and about 220 times more likely to be involved in a non-fatal attack by a man than a bear. Oh, also, I should note, statistics on bear attacks are not infamously underreported, unlike the other side of the equation, where statistics show that only about 1/5 of violent encounters against women by men are actually reported, and less than 1/5 of those actually lead to an arrest, and less than 1/100th of those lead to a felony conviction, which means 1% of the ones that are actually reported, meaning not only that men who perpetrate these acts are much more likely to go free than they are to be punished, but also have the opportunity to do it again. Do you want to know what the punishment is for a bear who kills or even injures a human being?
They kill it. They'll euthanize it. Yep, there you go. He beat me to it.
There are no repeat offenders, and there is no recidivism. Oh, and not to mention that most states have laws on self-defense against bears that are, let's just say, very favorable to the human being being attacked. Whereas, by the way, in the United States, when a woman who brings a legal claim of self-defense, they are 2 times more likely to be found guilty of a crime themselves than when a man brings up a claim of self-defense. It's almost like we just don't believe women or something. You know? Speaking of which, the second reason why the answer is bear. It's because women are telling you that it's bear. That's kind of all that matters.
You had to leave Maryland.
People then started asking their significant others about this. They would ask their husband on, if our daughter was alone in the woods, how would you respond? Or if I was alone in the woods, how would you respond? There are, and I'm not exaggerating, literally thousands of these videos at this point. I just cherry picked a few. And so this is truly the question dividing the internet today. Watch this perspective.
In the woods with a man or a bear, what would you choose?
A man or a bear?
A man or a bear, a strange man you don't know, or a bear.
That's a hard question.
What would you choose?
Well, they both have the ability to kill her, which we don't want. The bear only has the ability to kill her or leave her alone. The man has 1,000 possibilities, so honestly, probably the bear.
If I were alone in the woods, would you rather me encounter a bear or a man?
I mean, is it a friendly man?
We don't know anything else. It's just man or bear.
I feel more like bear. I don't know, because I feel like I would know what the outcome would be with a bear, even if it was like an aggressive one. I don't know what the outcome would be with like a bad man.
Yeah.
So I think I lean more toward a bear. I mean, both situations, I guess you hope for a good man and a good bear.
Yeah.
But I think you're more likely to anticipate what a bear would do than what a man would do.
There's a trend.
Fascinating. One more response to this, and then we'll get into what you guys think.
Going around right now where women are asking their male partners if they would rather the woman be stuck in the woods with a random man or a bear. Would you rather me be stuck in the woods with a bear or a random man?
Man.
Most men are questioning why women are answering bear, and why women would prefer to be stuck in the woods with a bear than a random man. But while there are many, many reasons, here are just a few why I would personally choose bear. Shanann Watts and her children were murdered by her husband, Chris Watts. Lacey Peterson and her unborn child were murdered by her husband, Scott Peterson. Gabby Petito was murdered by her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie. Hannah Clark and her children were murdered by her estranged husband, Rowan Baxter. Anna Walsh was murdered by her husband, Brian Walsh. Jennifer Farber-Dulos was murdered by her ex-husband, Fotis Dulos. Grace Mullane was murdered by her Tinder date, Shane Kempson. And Suzanne Morphew was allegedly murdered by her husband, Barry Morphew. Meanwhile, there have been only 180 fatal bear attacks in North America in the last 240 years. But that's just a few reasons why I would pick bear.
Wow. Interestingly, I was going to bring up Gabby Petito later, so I'll come back to Gabby Petito and how the media really loved that story and how we all really were attached to that story. In the midst of all of these types of responses, there are even some people making some laughable moments too, which we'll play right after the end of this video.
It's not all men, but there are many.
Me. This is me. Me and the bear having a dance party in the woods. You gotta learn how to laugh at this stuff, right? So I've been reading your guys' comments as this is coming through, and it's fascinating to me to see what you think. My friend Marguerite dropped something very, very profound. Marguerite had something beautiful to say, and I want to go back to the top of her comments in here. Oh, dang it. I might have missed it. You guys might have put too many in here. Generally was saying, I think women are immediately gravitating towards saying bear because they have no intimate experience with the idea of a bear attack. However, they hear all the time in the media that men are dangerous, men are scary. We always hear stories of women being murdered by their boyfriends, their husbands, etc., etc. And so they think of the scariest thing in their mind, and their immediate gut reaction is to say, I would rather take my chances with a bear than with a man, because basically all they ever hear is that men are dangerous, men are dangerous, men are dangerous, men are scary. She says it's not the fault of the women that they're saying this stuff. They're being asked a question that they have to answer from their gut immediately. So they go to the scariest thing that they can imagine. That's such an interesting perspective and really ties into what a lot of you guys were saying in our chat throughout all of this, that sure, there's all these statistics and all of these horror stories and all of the insanity about men being dangerous to women. And I just want to say up front, yes, that is real. It is a very real problem. Those stories of those women who were tragically slaughtered by their boyfriends, their ex-husbands, their estranged lovers, their current husbands, etc., are real. And that should never happen, but sadly happens far too often. But I also think there is a level of sensationalism happening with these stories to the point that we are constantly trying to keep up the narrative that women should be afraid of men, that all men to some degree are inherently these violent, dangerous, horrible beings. And when I was really thinking about what I wanted to say in response to all of this, first of all, my answer to the question, would I rather be trapped in the woods with a man or a bear? Both better watch the freak out, okay? Stay strapped, ladies. Do they want to be trapped in the woods with me is the real question, okay? I think that's how we really need to answer all of these things if we're actually serious about women's empowerment. I have a problem with the premise of the question itself, as if women don't go hiking alone in the woods or women don't go camping alone in the woods, and you just happen to have to dream up your worst case violent homicide scenario either by an animal or a human. Like, okay, let's give women a little bit more credit than that, but you know, it's fine. Stay strapped is all I'm going to say for all of that, and they don't want to be trapped with you at that point. But I'm noticing this narrative be escalated further and further and further every single day, that women need to be afraid of men because men are dangerous. Period. Full stop. And I find it maybe not so coincidental that one of my favorite speakers in the world, and easily the person that I would consider to be the most intelligent person on the face of the planet today, Jordan Peterson, Dr. Jordan Peterson, often says that men are dangerous and men should be dangerous, but you should be responsibly dangerous to that perspective. And I love his perspective on that. I love his thought on that, because to be dangerous doesn't always mean violent, doesn't always mean homicidal, doesn't always mean abusive, but it does mean that you have substantial power. And what do we often say in the superhero world? With great power comes great responsibility, right? It's this opportunity to protect the people that you love, to defend the people that you love, to defeat evil and violence. Hi, my fiance just walked in. Come here for a second. I need to ask you a question. That is an inherent trait of masculinity that's not often bad, but we are on purpose trying to erase. This is an awkward time in the middle of my rant, but would you rather I be trapped alone in the woods with a bear or a man?
I've seen this. I reject the premise because I don't know who the man is or what type of bear it is or where it is. Like, there's so many factors that play into that.
I reject the premise of the question, he says. Okay, generally speaking, if you had to pick one.
Well, like, there's a difference between would I leave you in the woods alone with a bear and like a rapist, or a bear and like a man that I know and like am friends with. Like, there's a big difference.
You also are afraid of bears to a bit of a silly, sensational degree.
What kind of bear?
I don't know. This is the point. The question is a lot more nuanced than people think. But
a bear.
You say a bear. Interesting. That is interesting.
I mean, statistically, how many men are actually criminals? Probably less than.
Yes, statistically, men are not all criminals. So it's fascinating. But all of this to be said, where I'm confused and frustrated by the virality of this trend is not, are all men evil, or are all women man haters, or are all men going to become violent, dangerous criminals, or do all women need to be afraid of all men? Like, yes, that is problematic. It's difficult for us to work through, and it's something that we should all be frustrated by. But the secondary aspect of this trend is, I think, what we need to be more concerned about. I've been asked more times over the last month and a half or so about the growing gender gap with values and policies between men and women, more than my entire career combined. And I'm sure all of you guys have seen this graph go viral over and over and over and over again over the last 6 months or so. This is from 1999 to 2023, the share of Americans aged 18 to 29, so the lowest end of the millennials and the highest end of Generation Z, who identify as liberal. For women, it peaked at an all-time high around 2017, 2018, and it's coming down pretty substantially actually right now, but is about 40% of young women that would self-identify themselves as liberal. Men, it's down to 25%, and since 2012, instead of trending together, you can see this growing chasm between women and men in terms of their political and cultural values. Specifically, women are 15 percentage points more likely to identify as liberal than men in the same group. And that gap on a numbers basis is 5 times larger than it was in 2000. It's not immediate cause for, oh my God, the world is ending. Somebody call the apocalypse hotline now, because it's only 40%, okay? That's not the majority. It's literally not even the majority. So like, hold your horses there for just a second. But the fact that the gap is 5 times larger today in 2024 than it was 24 years ago in 2000 speaks volumes to me about how we communicate about gender and about gender identity and roles in media to men and to women. Women are consistently being told all men are blank. All men are evil. All men are violent. All men are offenders. All men are abusive. All men are liars. All men are cheaters. All men are XYZ. All men are toxic. And everything remotely associated with masculinity is toxic. And I don't blame these young women for immediately answering bear. Frankly, I've been in the woods with bears many, many, many times. Fortunately, never been in the woods with a man who I don't know, to my knowledge. So that is a blessing in and of itself. And frankly, I probably would answer the same thing. But their premise of why they are answering bear over man, I don't blame them for. Because they are constantly being told men are scary. Men are dangerous. Men are evil. Men are toxic, to the point that you need to be afraid of them. I made a video a couple of months ago. Oh, what was I saying about? I was reacting to a tweet, and I cannot remember what the tweet said right now. Basically, somebody said, like, our society doesn't need men. All men suck. We should just move on from men, period. And first of all, that's literally not possible. But second of all, it made me really sad, and I stitched that reaction to a tweet with another video talking about men working in very key roles in our society when it comes to the really difficult jobs in the world that are difficult to work through, right? That men are overwhelmingly in military positions, that men are overwhelmingly in dirty jobs, that men are overwhelmingly electricians and plumbers and drivers and make our society function. And I think many women, because of the strategic narrative that so many people have been telling us over the last several decades, certainly throughout my lifetime, don't know just how crucial men are to a functioning society. And there is a beauty in being peacefully dangerous because you have strength, you have defensive instincts, you have a tendency towards protective instincts in society that can be used for nefarious purposes. And we see that far too often in society, and that needs to stop, but can also be channeled towards the proliferation and protection of society at large. Career Smart put together an occupational breakdown by gender as of 2022. Male-dominated professions are shown in this list, and this might actually blow your mind. For mechanics and electricians, vehicle technicians, mechanics and electricians involve 99.19% of that job market being male. 98.27% of electricians are men. 96.4% of electrical and electronics technicians are men. 93% of metalworking machine operatives are men. 98% of plumbers and heating and ventilating engineers are men. 97% of forklift truck drivers are men. 97% of large goods vehicle drivers are men. 95% of taxi cab drivers and chauffeurs are men. 95% of train and tram drivers are men. 92% of bus and coach drivers are men. 98.9% of carpenters are men. 96% of construction and building trades are made up of men. 95% of painters are men. 88% of product managers and directors in construction are men. 94% of electrical engineers, 93% of mechanical engineers, 93% of electronics engineers, 90% of civil engineers, all men. 90% of aircraft pilot and engineers, men. In telecommunications, 96% of employees are men. 93% of IT engineers are men. 84% of vehicle and parts salespeople are men. 76% of estimators, values, and assessors are men. Debt collectors, 72% male, 63% for finance and investment analysts, etc. And females don't really think about any of those things, generally speaking, which is sad because our society fundamentally could not function without them, right? And a lot of those professions involve a level of responsible dangerousness, involve a capacity to put yourself out there, particularly in military occupations, in the oil and gas industry, in energy, in engineering, in carpenters, in literally utilizing your entire being for the proliferation and production of society at large. And so I highly want to encourage everyone to spend some time thinking about this concept of being dangerous, but in a responsible way, and why truly protecting masculinity, not the actually dangerous version of a perversion of masculinity that some people are trying to promote, particularly in criminal behavior, but in real protective, defensive, instinctual masculinity that is a beautiful thing to behold. It's sad to me that as the internet has been divided over this man versus bear question, we've almost resurrected the everything associated with manhood is toxic and everything remotely masculine is toxic in the process, because it's not. And we desperately need strong, good, moral men living in truth to survive and especially to thrive as a society. So before we switch gears into another topic, I'm dying to know, would you rather be alone in the woods with a bear or a man? Women watching, let me know in the chat, because I am dying to get your perspective on this. And as you continue to see this conversation spread like wildfire all over the internet, I need your help in trying to bring some rationality back to the conversation so that this chasm does not continue growing. This is a very strategic method utilized right now largely by the political left to try to continue dividing men and women as far as they possibly can. Because if men and women cannot agree on anything, we won't be able to form strong family units. We won't be able to form beautiful marriages that give life back into our communities. We need each other. We were made for each other, and that is a beautiful partnership we should be fighting for. All right, let's start on Instagram. Guap says man. Lad Rainey says a manly man in the woods, preferably my husband. XJ Max says you can't outrun a bear. Mariella says man, and my boyfriend agreed. I want you trapped in the woods with a man. Maya says man, please. I don't want to be ripped apart. Generally speaking, a bear is not going to rip you apart, but interesting thought. Matthew says anyone who says bear is beyond delusional. Senorita Laurita says a man. Sarah Rose, probably a man. Lavender Fields has an important question for us. What if the man identifies as a bear? The questions of our time, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I love that. I love that. Marcus Trax says, as a man, I choose bear. Ruby says, if it means I'd meet my future husband in the woods, then man. Shelby says, I understand why people pick bear because I'd rather die quickly than get raped over and over, ruining my life. But the chances of that happening versus actually being ripped apart by a bear is so rare. Interesting. Ellie says a man. Whispers says bear. Some things are worse than death. Meg says, I guess bear, but I don't know. I'm torn. Over on Locals, Crazy Cat Lady says man. I would rather be trapped in the woods with a man, not a bear. Over on YouTube. Gosh, you guys are getting into all of the specifics here. All of the specifics. Does he have clothes on or not? And is he good looking or ugly? Are we talking about the bear or the man? Amy, I think most men are good. The small percentage of bad ones have polluted the large percentage of good ones. That is powerful. That is powerful. Nitty Witty would trust a person of my own species, regardless of gender, any day over a bear. Interesting. Huh. The world may never know, but keep fighting for the truth. Keep fighting for goodness. Keep promoting real masculinity in the world rather than saying everything is toxic or evil or scary, because manhood, masculinity, the nature of men is worth fighting for, is worth preserving. And women, instead of being trained to fear men, should have an opportunity to fall in love with what real masculinity looks like in society instead. I got a couple more stories I want to cover with you guys on the stream. First and foremost, that Teen Vogue, shockingly, out of literally nowhere, publishes this article this week, and I am absolutely shook. You guys know we react to Teen Vogue articles and headlines often on the stream, and usually they involve some sort of capacity of religion is evil, Marxism is good, you should cheat on your boyfriend, polyamory is awesome, shout your abortion, teenagers, these are all good things. And then out of literally nowhere, a couple of days ago, Teen Vogue drops this headline, and I actually stopped dead in my tracks. This is a new column called Soft Launch that's about mental health and well-being. And the headline is, as you guys can read, how religion helped these believers improve their mental health. I was floored reading this because this is actually scientifically proven that generally speaking, if you have a tie to religion and you embrace some sort of spiritual practice, your mental health is leaps and bounds better than anyone else in your life who lacks spirituality as a part of their journey and their personal identity. So they're running this new series throughout April, or did throughout April, with Teen Vogue, examining different facets of faith and religion among young people, and decided to publish this article. And I know we've been talking about a lot of really heavy subjects lately, and so I wanted to include this in our stream today because I hope this serves as an inspiring next step forward for those who really need it, that even Teen Vogue, of all publications, is willing to give us a window into something bigger than our empty, broken, often secular, evil, and divisive, as we just talked about, world. So this woman who wrote the piece, her name is Elise, interviewed a few of her friends, and here's what her friends had to say. I love how we're getting ads for Disney Lego. Neither of those look particularly fun. I don't know, the Beauty and the Beast one is kind of cool. If it was Lego Star Wars, as we know the overlords are listening to us through the internet, I might click on the ad, so get my FBI agent on that, somebody. Amelia Ortiz, who was interviewed, says, my spiritual practice is something that's rooted in keeping me grounded and helping to be a supportive tool for my mental health. It's definitely something that helps bring me back to center. Kira says, my mom only took me to church on big holidays like Easter, so I had to really take the time to find my own path into church. When I relocated from Wisconsin to Atlanta, I realized how sheltered I was as a woman, and I was tested, but the lessons made me who I am today. But at the time, my mental state wasn't okay. I needed to get closer to God and find my own way. Kira later said, in the past, I would get upset or moody when other people received opportunities before me. Since I started putting God first, I had to learn that God put me on this journey for a reason. I feel like God wants me to be a part of something greater. He prepared me for what's to come, and looking back on everything in the past, I know I wasn't ready for those opportunities at the time. The next question was, what advice would you give to someone who's new to navigating their spiritual journey? Kira said, you'll know when you're ready. Take your time. You're going to learn so many things along the way, so don't rush the process to find what works for you and where you belong. And the other woman interviewed for this piece said, all of our paths are going to look different, right? I always try to tell people to keep in mind that there's always room for things to change. If you're doing it because you want to support your mental health, it's important to remember that this is just a tool in your toolbox. It isn't a replacement for anything, but it can absolutely be a really wonderful, supportive tool. So they go through some specific pointers for anybody looking to piece things back together, specifically in the faith department, and is feeling lost in the faith department, to be intentional about why you are pursuing faith, to trust the process, to explore, give yourself permission to check out different religious or spiritual beliefs, especially if you weren't raised with them. You don't need to have everything figured out, and it's okay to explore different angles. You can seek support through a community, friends, family, spiritual leaders, support group, etc., is very important, and to practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself as you navigate this whole rebuilding thing. It's not always going to be a smooth ride, but showing yourself some love along the way can make a world of difference. Let's be real. This faith journey is a lifelong thing. I was shocked reading this very small article that's an excerpt from a conversation hosted by Teen Vogue, about why faith matters and can dramatically change your life for the better. And in the midst of our often hopeless and divisive and angry society, I've noticed more in the last couple of weeks, people far older than myself seeking a change in their faith direction than I've ever seen throughout my adult life. We've talked about it a million times here on the stream, but we interviewed Tammy Peterson, Dr. Jordan Peterson's wife, about her radical conversion to Christianity after a miraculous recovery from a non-treatable cancer. Candace Owens was recently baptized a few weeks ago. Russell Brand has just completed his first week as a Christian and is praying the rosary and reading the Bible on his show every day. We are watching a fascinating spiritual awakening happening with people right now in our empty, evil, divisive, and secular society. And I think so much of that is because people are realizing the more stuff like this becomes the mainstream narrative, that we should hate each other, that everyone's evil, that you should be afraid of one another, and we continue dividing further and further and further and further. Faith allows us to come together. Faith allows us to experience unity and shared humanity in something bigger than ourselves. Faith allows us to keep hope in a hopeless time where the narrative often feels divided. And so while there's wildly sensational questions and divisive questions like man or bear, either way, you're going to die in the woods. Instead, I'm watching people gravitate towards much more meaningful questions in society. What are we doing here? What's the meaning of life? Who was I created to be? How can I make an impact in my community? How can I inspire others? And remember, as I mentioned earlier, no matter how sensational these headlines get, this is not the majority. Okay? What you're seeing on these college campuses is not the majority. What you're seeing on your TikTok For You page with women saying, all these men are so evil, all these men are so dangerous, I would never ever talk to a man, let alone go into the woods with them, that is not the majority. Instead, I'm watching a renaissance, a revival, a turning point, if you will, in society for people desperately seeking more purpose, meaning, foundational value, and a path forward. And it starts with us being willing to build that community, to bridge the divide, and to start telling the truth again. And honestly, to laugh again, like the girl dancing with the woods, or dancing with the bear in the woods. My freaking queen. Let's play that last thing one more time, because I just thought it was so ridiculously funny. Here. This would be me in the woods, okay? Would you rather be alone with a bear or a man in the woods? This is me. To close us out today, in remembrance to continue laughing in the face of all of the insanity that we are dealing with, the Babylon Bee has probably created the funniest video I have ever seen them make, which is saying something, by the way, because they have some really solid bangers over the last several years. But we'll end the show with this amazing clip of what woke Jesus probably would be saying to his followers. As you guys are leaving the show today, please do me a huge favor and smash that follow or subscribe button. Thank you so much for 50,000 subs on YouTube and almost 1 million of you in this community on Instagram. Keep bridging the divide, keep telling the truth, keep bringing people together, and always keep laughing. We'll be back after this clip tomorrow, back on the show at 3 p.m. Eastern. Love you guys. Gia, I'm so happy to have you.
If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn it off with the other also. Unless they're a Republican. Then you can feel free to punch them in the face. Let the children come unto me, and do not hinder them, unless they might be born into poverty, or they might be an inconvenience to your party lifestyle. In that case, feel free to murder them in the womb. Haven't you read that in the beginning, God created them male and female, and genderqueer, femboy, trans man, trans woman, 2 Spirit, you have heard that it was said, hate your enemies. But I say to you, this is correct. And here's a handy little chart to help you understand who your enemy is, based on Marxist intersectionality theory.
As the Lord was setting out on a journey, a certain young man approached him.
Oh, my lord, what must I do to be saved? Be less white.
But the man went away sad, for he was very white.
My lord, if you had been here, my brother Lazarus would not have died.
Do not be afraid. For Lazarus will live again through this mail-in ballot. Bigender, non-binary, demi-boy, omnigender, pangender, xenogender, someone who identifies as a large ornate building. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by reducing their carbon footprint and getting vaccinated 12 times, like me. Cancel your enemies. Curse those who bless you. And burn down the whole country if you don't get your way. Tater-tot gender, ghost boy, tri-spirit, weather gender, transfemme, polyfluid, dolphin man, yodel boy, Goomba sexual.
It's a miracle. Jesus has multiplied the fish and the loaves.
No, my son. I've merely stolen it from that village over there. It's called wealth redistribution. Pretty sweet, huh?
Nice.
Would you like to be healed, my son?
Yes, of course, Jesus. Thank you. Thank you.
Then fear not, for I have supported a new healthcare bill that will force you to buy insurance. Because I am a good person. By this, they will know that you are my disciples. If you have one of these yard signs, or you wear a Ukraine pin, or you put one of these human rights campaign stickers on your camel. Here, take one. Super sticky. The poor you will always have with you. This is because of capitalism. Eat the rich. 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 Infiniqueer. Barista queer. Cocaine bear gender. Marvel sexual. Hyperqueer. Hedgehog brony. And last but not least, bi-curious demi-gherkin.
What about Shrek gendered?
Oh, yes. Shrek gendered too, yeah. Whatever you guys want. Make them all up. It's fine.
The church is under attack. Marxist...